When you jump in and you fix it, you teach your team, you teach the business. The whole business learns at a fundamental level that you are the solution. And so that tends to be how founders solve major problems. And when you do that, you actually make yourself more important in the business, and it's harder to come out of it. It's harder to get above the business.
Welcome to the Richer Soul podcast, where we share how to live in harmony across health, wealth, time, relationships, and spirituality. How do you bring them all together to live your ultimate life? The best thing is we've got nothing to sell, just great advice from people who've succeeded and lived that dream. Welcome to Richer Soul, Jason Henneberry. It's great to have you join us today.
Thanks for having me on the show, Rocky. Appreciate it.
And I'm excited to learn from you. We always like to start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
Yeah. Okay. Great question. So my main business today, I'm in the finance space. So I'm kind of like second generation in the finance space. My father was head of a mortgage finance company in the early 80s. And so I guess I learned about my industry, through osmosis, just by being around my family. So we've always been a very entrepreneurial family, and I carried the torch forward.
So did you, because I know a lot of entrepreneurial families, the kids go through the ups and downs. There's like great times and then there's bad times.
Sure.
Did you see that, or was yours much more
I
good
saw
times?
I saw that. So, real estate in the early 80s, there was some good moments, there were some bad moments. So I was just old enough as a kid to kind of understand that those moments were happening. So I've seen a lot of success that my parents had when I was very young, and I also saw them go through some more challenging times through those market swings. So I think that definitely gave me an appreciation for, both sides of that equation along the way.
I was going to say, in the 80s, interest rates hit about 18%.
They sure did. Yeah.
That kind of changed the mortgage business and the real estate business.
Yeah. So I think that my family was in the mortgage business around that time, obviously, but I think they were really starting to succeed on the tail end of that first big swing. So interest rates, as they were coming down from that level, that's where my father really took off with his career. Where I saw the second swing, it was like 87, you had the big market correction, and then recession in the early 90s. And so I saw the shift on the tail end of the 80s, actually.
Yeah. Okay. Now, did your parents teach you business, or did you just kind of learn by watching?
I think you learn by watching when you're a kid. No, we didn't sit down to say this is business, but they were very open about what they were up to as well. So I didn't. It was an active conversation in our family, and we do the same in our family. I was always very open with my kids around where I'm at, what I'm doing, the success that we're having, the challenges that we're having. And it's really cool, actually. I've got a 20-year-old, an 18-year-old, and a 16-year-old, and they're all starting to do stuff now. And so I think just not necessarily sitting down to say, hey, I'm teaching you this, but not also being afraid to just be transparent and open about what you're up to. The kids pick it up along the way. It's like huge value for any parent sharing with their kids, I think.
Did school teach you anything about money or business?
Not a lot. Yeah. I did, I would say, elementary, high school, practically nothing. I think we all have that experience. I did a BCom. So in university, I took a business degree, and I think there's definitely some things that I learned and carried forward, but what I learned about being an entrepreneur, I learned in the trenches too. So it was all post-education stuff. And in fact, when I graduated from university, I didn't even think I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I went and worked for one of the big banks. I thought I was going to be a commercial banker, and I started out my career in that environment. And it didn't really work for me, and so I left to essentially start my own business. And that's when I really started to understand that I had that entrepreneurial bug. But I went corporate route first. So there you go.
You never know. So was there something that prompted you to start your business? It sounded like working for someone wasn't working to your...
Yeah, I mean, I was working in the bank, like I said, putting up some big numbers for branch level stuff. And one day there was a gentleman that walked in unsolicited, just came, sat down with me, and he said, I'm on this division of the bank and we're on the mortgage side. And this is what this looks like. And if you came and worked over in my division, you wouldn't have to do all the rest of the stuff that you're doing as a personal banker. You wouldn't have to open accounts or do investments or credit cards or whatever, all the personal banking stuff. He was like, you would just do mortgages. And I had been doing a lot of mortgages because I was in one of the main financial centers. So we had a lot of like lawyers and people that, accountants that were in the building. And so we did a lot of big mortgages. So I looked like I was doing a lot of big mortgage money. And then I went and worked for that other division. I learned pretty quick, you eat what you kill. And so I went from being a superstar in branch to being like nobody. I think I closed one deal in my next 6 months, almost starved to death. I really learned how to hit the pavement, and that you got to put the work, you got to put it out there to get it back. So I went from a very protected corporate environment to having to figure out how to fend for myself. And it was through that process that I learned that I was actually pretty good at it. It took me a lot longer than most, but on the back end of it, sort of 6 to 12 months, things started to work out. And when they did, man, I really got the bug, and I just never looked back. So that was a good move in the end, but it was touch and go for a minute.
It's always an up and down. Now, You started the one business, but you've actually built multiple businesses.
Yeah. So our main business is we've got a mortgage finance company, essentially a mortgage brokerage. We're national across the country. We have about 600 agents from coast to coast. One of my business partners is actually the same person that brought me out of the bank branch 20 plus years ago. So, we basically have all been working together for a long time. And one thing just led to another. We were all doing sort of solo sales, talking to clients and realtors, drumming up mortgage business. But eventually you get good at that. And then that, you attract other people to the team. People want to get mentored, or they see the success you're having and they want to be part of that. And so for the longest time, it was just, me and the team. But at some point, the business got big enough where we started building, services around what we do. We had to build tools and systems for ourselves. And oftentimes, what I found in business is if you scratch your own itch, probably other people have the same problem. And so we built what is, a fairly substantial business in our space. And we built a lot of tools and infrastructure around that. And in order to, every once in a while, we built something that we thought had application elsewhere. So we turned it into a product. We didn't just do it for us and our team. We turned it into a product, and then we would offer it to the rest of the industry. And that turned out to be a really good move because we were able to build several different product lines. We even sold one of the pieces of tech to Rocket Mortgage along the way, which is cool. So we built some good stuff. But it allowed us to generate more revenue on those tools, but it also allowed us to have different types of conversations with other people. And so now we were a service provider to the industry, and it allowed us to actually recruit into our business. And so sharing essentially the stuff that we built for ourselves with the rest of the industry actually led to more growth for our main business. So the lesson I learned along the way was, don't hold on to what you got. Like a lot of entrepreneurs will do something and then they think they've got the secret sauce and they don't want to tell anybody about it. They don't want to share it. We went the other way. We just started sharing everything. And sometimes that worked out and other times it didn't, but it led to like way more growth overall for the business by actually sharing with peers.
I call that the Amazon model. Like Amazon built their whole shared, scalable underneath their architecture that everything runs upon. And then they turn that into a business line. And they've done that with many others. Sure. What's different though about you is you were not doing the craft of the business. You were doing the running of the business. And I find most business owners are stuck in the craft of the business. They're not very good at building the business of the business.
Yeah. Okay. I agree with you there. A lot of us are, you're talking about like the E-myth there, where you're in the weeds and you're not on the business. There's some, I don't even know who said it, but someone said it recently. There's sort of like working in the business, working on the business, which is, that's the E-myth level where, you become an operator, but then there's working above the business. And that's a whole other layer. And so I've been really fortunate to have some really good people around me, which has allowed me to get to that place where you can kind of work above the business. And now you're really in that seat where you're thinking strategically about what are all the things you can do to improve the current business? What are the elements that you can take and partition off and turn into other businesses that are, complementary, those types of things. And I think you're right. Like, a lot of people have trouble just getting from in the business and to being able to focus on it. The number one, when I see people that are able to get out of the weeds, the common denominator is always they find good people and then they get the heck out of their way. They point them in the right direction and then they get out of the way. The ones that never seem to be able to break out of that, and I see it a lot, is they try to micromanage. They try to they won't let anything go wrong. They're worried that, that they don't allow that person to thrive. And I think those people never kind of break out. They maybe hire an assistant, then they get pulled back or whatever.
Is it that, or is the difference that first group hires people who are better than them at doing the craft?
Yeah.
Whereas the second group hires the person they can afford and then has to train them, which is why they're stuck in
hiring. The compensation model has to make sense too. So what works really well, obviously, if you find a really great person and then incentivize them so that they can thrive. So you have to be willing to own less of the pie, but it's a much bigger pie. But before any of those economics kick in, I think you have to have certain things in place. Like if you're, let's say you have a process in your business. Well, if you're going to get someone else to pick off that process, then you better have documented it. You better have built that process in a way that it doesn't rely on you. So if it's all in your head, it's going to be hard to hand that off, right? So there's like some bare minimum things that a lot of people don't do. They just go and hire, and then they expect that person to figure it out.
Did you build your process, or did someone build it for you?
I built it for me. A lot of the times. Yeah. So where are you going with that?
Are you naturally the type of person who can build a process? Because I find most business owners are stuck in their head and they have no idea how to actually teach, build, and create a system and a process that somebody else can run.
Awesome question. I think I'm fairly lucky in that I'm versatile. I can roll up my sleeves and I can be really good at sales and be that person. I can also be really granular and I can fulfill on an administrative process, and I can just do the same thing over and over again. And I'm kind of lazy, so I figured out how to create processes. So my natural cycle is, if I'm doing something new, I go figure out how to do it so that I prove that it's something that's worth doing in the first place, whatever that means. Makes you more efficient, makes you more money. You prove that it's worth doing. Then I figure out how to make myself as efficient as possible in that function. Then I document that, and then I replace myself. And I think that's a learned skill. And maybe you don't start with the whole business, but you start with a part of the business. I do think that you can learn it. The real problem is, I think people that aren't naturally able to do that is they just hire someone and they expect that person to figure it out. So they're just like, hey, I need admin support. So they go hire the first person that they find, and they're like, you're now my admin support. And then they just dump a bunch of stuff on them, and they themselves don't even know what they want to hand off. And maybe, and to your point, maybe they're not. They need to get some extra support on the process development.
I'm a big fan of the book Traction, which is EOS. There's tons of systems. I don't really care which one people use, but what Gino did was define the visionary and the integrator. The visionary is the person with the big ideas. The integrator is the person who can take that big idea from somebody and turn it into reality. And in his book, he talks about the fact that the integrator is a rare species. And that's why I asked that of you, because it's very rare that I meet somebody who talks the way you do about how you do things. Because I use the same words. Like, I tell people, I'm like, I'm lazy. And then I'm like, no, I'm super efficient. It's the other half of the concept. How do you build the systems and processes and turn them over and do them in the most efficient, duplicatable way? And I just don't find that very many people can do that. That's all.
It's for sure a difficult skill. Yeah. I have found integrators. So I would say that I'm on the Venn diagram of all those roles, which is, I guess I'm lucky that way. But then I don't only hire, because we do have some core admin people, but I like to hire integrators. I like to hire people that are highly capable. They don't necessarily create the vision, but man, if you just point them in the right direction, they will figure out a better way to build that process. And that's the premise of the book. I have been able to find a few of those people, and I have one in each of my business arms, essentially. And if you can find someone like that, you wrap your arms around them and you compensate them, but they will make you so much more successful.
And that was my question to you, is how well do you have to compensate them? Because I think that's the rub for a lot of people. Those people, if they know their value, are not cheap.
They're not cheap. They're not cheap. So if you're an entrepreneur, so this is my process for launching anything. Like I said before, like we have processes, and sometimes we build a tool and we're like, well, that's cool, other people could use it. I look at the outcome first, and I'm like, okay, if we get this right and we can get 100 users on it, let's just say something like that, you can get 100 other business owners buying this thing, or 1,000, or whatever the number is. What are the economics of this? What's the most I start backwards. I'm like, what's the most someone would pay for this if we could operationalize their business? And then from there, it's like, what's left? And then if I totally don't want to be involved in that business, what is that business going to need? It's going to need an integrator. It's going to need a couple of admin people. It's going to need a salesperson. And then, you're like, well, this person's going to need to make whatever, 100 grand a year. This person's going to need to make 50 grand a year. And you add it all up and you look at it and you go, is there enough left over? And if there isn't, if you can't even get close on that math, then we don't even try. But a lot of people build the other way. They just start building and launching and selling, and they go the other way. And then they get halfway into this project and then they're like, shoot, the economics don't work. I have to pay someone less than I probably should. And they don't get the right people. And then they get problems. They haven't thought it through.
I agree with you, because this is what we do for our clients. We actually sit down and say, okay, we're going from point X to point Y. It's kind of like flying an airplane. What direction are we going? Where do we want to be? And by the way, how much fuel, cash do I need to get there? And I find most business owners don't know how to sit down and say what you just basically said. How much will someone pay? How many can I sell? All right, that tells me my revenue. Now, what's it cost me to deliver it? What do all those people cost? Is there enough now to deliver it and then to run the business itself? And what's it going to take to get there? And I find a lot of people just don't plan like that.
And oftentimes, you probably see this a lot. I see it a lot because in our world, people are solo operators and they build a team, and then they get tired of doing the same old. So then they start getting creative. Sometimes they have ideas and they're like, I want to go build a CRM, or I want to build something for my industry or whatever. And a lot of times, like, these people are making good money and running their business, and then they try to branch out, which I've already told you, I've branched out a few times. Like we got lucky on a few things. But before you branch out, before you add a new product line or something like that, like, you got to make sure that your core is so strong and so stable that one, it can survive without you. So that's always what we do. We don't branch out into new, first of all, before we've got the first thing like completely stable. But also you got to look at, like, does all the effort that I'm about to put into the new thing, could I just do like 5% more in my core business, or 10% more? Like, could I just do more of the same old boring thing and be better off emotionally, time commitment wise, risk wise, financially? So I see a lot of people that come to me with ideas because I guess they've seen me do some stuff and they're like, hey, I just want to bounce this off you. And a lot of these ideas, I'm like, what is the most you could possibly make at this idea? Like, this looks like it's about to eat up 50% of your time, and you're already making 20 or 30 grand a month over here. Like, if you go get 300 users on this thing, you're gonna make 10 grand a month at $30 or $40 a piece. Like, why would you even bother trying when you could just go do $5,000 extra a month in revenue in your current business? Just watch and repeat. I don't know what it is. So I agree with you. A lot of people don't think it through. They just go down this venture path without a fully modeled out plan. So you probably see a lot of that.
Well, I did it in the way I built my business. And I also, we were just on a call. I run a group for other people who do the kind of business I do. And they're always bringing these ideas up. And I'm like, whoa, time out. you make X dollars doing what you do. All of these other things, you're lowering your average pay. You're lowering it by a lot.
Yeah.
Why would you do work at 10, 20, 30 cents, 40 cents, even 50 cents on the dollar? If you're not making at least as much or more, the answer is no. Let somebody else do it and take the responsibility, because it brings so much complexity to the business and so much extra work. And you're gonna work more and make less. And I'm like, that makes no sense to me.
Makes no sense. I can tell you I've personally done that like half a dozen times where I work more and make less. Like I do it all the time. But I know myself. I know that the reason I do it is I really enjoy the creative process. I don't do it without a proper plan. And hopefully you get to the other side of that. But every single time you try to add an arm or you extend into another business line or product line, you always may work harder and make less initially. And if you're not careful, you risk sacrificing the revenue that pays for everything in the first place. So it is a very risky proposition, and you have to know what you're getting into. And yeah, it sounds like this is how you help people, which I think people definitely need guidance on this kind of stuff.
No, it is. So you've done a lot of leadership. How do you delegate accountability and responsibility?
That's a good question. It's easy to assign tasks. It's easy to delegate task work and say, these are all the things I need you to do. Where accountability comes in, accountability and ownership, they're kind of the similar words. They mean slightly different things, but really what those are about is like owning the outcome. So like you can say to someone, I need you to do this thing repeatedly, but it's like, why do you do that? Well, there's an outcome in mind. And when something doesn't go to plan, a system breaks, a process breaks, market conditions change, a client is off the rails, revenue's at risk, whatever. There's all kinds of things that can go wrong. If you've only handed over the task, then the ownership over the outcome tends to bounce back on the founder. That's what I've found. And so to successfully get yourself out of the weeds, you have to hand over tasks and accountability. And to your question, which is how do you do it? What I've learned is you do it in small increments. Is you give them ownership over a small part, and then you get out of their way. You let them test it. You allow them to fail. You contain the blast radius. They learn from it. Sometimes you tie compensation to outcome. That's where compensation comes in. So you don't just hand over a whole thing. You've got to gradually hand over the accountability and the ownership. I found that works best.
Do you let them fail?
Yes, let people
So that's
fail.
hard. That's really hard. But why do you let them fail?
You let them fail. It's easier to explain why you let them fail by saying the opposite. So when something goes wrong, you have your team and something goes wrong. Our tendency as founders is to step in and fix it. Let's say revenue's at risk. Something's going off the rails and there's important revenue at risk. As a founder, we look at it, we go, that's wrong. That's whatever's happening. And I don't want that revenue to fall apart because it's so important to the business. You jump in and you fix it. And what happens is when you jump in and you fix it, you teach your team, you teach the business. The whole business learns at a fundamental level that you are the solution. And so that tends to be how founders solve major problems. And when you do that, you actually make yourself more important in the business, and it's harder to come out of it. It's harder to get above the business. So we want to not do that, which means we have to let that revenue potentially fail. We have to let the team and the ecosystem, they have to let the systems, the team, the processes actually solve the problem. Sometimes that means that things go wrong, and sometimes that means they fail. You have to provide guidance to them, but you don't want to immediately jump in and solve the problem. And so that's what I was talking about earlier. You want to contain that blast radius. You want it so that the team can learn and fail where it doesn't destroy your business. And then once they've got that part under control, give them a bit more reach and you expand that potential blast radius. And if you do that right, it takes more time. But what happens is you get a very capable team that doesn't turn to you when things go wrong. They just solve the problem. And if you tie compensation in with that, they're incentivized to solve the problem. you can actually step away from your business. You can get true freedom, which is why we're all entrepreneurs in the first place, is to have freedom. Otherwise, we just go work for someone. So I think that that's very difficult for a lot of entrepreneurs, is to get out of people's way and to allow failure to happen. But that is a critical piece of the recipe, is to allow it to happen.
How do you train them that failure's okay and they're not going to get fired?
Well, that just comes down to how you react to it, and that's a personal style thing. You have to make sure that I think there's lots of different ways to do that, but you have to make sure you definitely, the question you asked is the thing you want to try to achieve, which is you want your team to know that they have control over the outcome, that they're responsible for the outcome, that they win when they get it right, and that they don't, we all lose together when they get it right. And if you can create that confidence, then they are more likely to try to solve the problem than to come back to you for the solution. And so again, start small so that when there is a failure, it's not so emotional for the founder, so that you can just allow it to fail and be like, don't worry about it. It's fine. Let's go get it the next client. Let's go get the next piece of revenue. So you got to be careful. And this is where a lot of founders go wrong, is they'll just hire someone and be like, you're now doing all this, and they haven't provided that the right infrastructure and the right boundaries. That person goes out and fails. And then the founder is like, holy crap, you just blew up my business. And they start freaking out. So they feel the need to jump in. They feel the need to overreact. So it's definitely a founder mistake. And so, it's not the employees or the staff's mistake at all. It's like your kids. Like, you're not going to get them to go, if they're learning how to walk, it's one step in front of the other. And then when they start to run, they're moving a little faster. They're going to trip. They're going to fall down. You got to let them do that. They're not going to run a marathon on day one. So don't set them up for massive.
No, that makes sense. How do you compensate them in line to get the results that you want? Like, what do you use? Like, what type of metrics or what type of system are you using to do that?
Sure. If you draw a line in the sand and you go, sales, like salespeople are fundamentally wired different than administrators. I tend to design compensation plans that work for both sides, because a salesperson needs an admin team to fulfill often. So like in our world, in the mortgage space or in the real estate space, or, financial planning space, you will often have a sales role and an administrative fulfillment role. The sales role is compensated on some sort of revenue performance bonus. It's based on revenue. The administrative role is based on task fulfillment. So they get bonused based on delivering on tasks or administrative objectives. And so if you get that right, the best combinations have been where the sales leader has revenue targets and bonuses based on revenue, and then the administrator has task, or call it widget targets. Because what will happen is the sales leader will push hard on sales because they want to hit their next revenue threshold for the month or the quarter, which means they will hit the team with more potential administration. And if the team gets bonused on widgets or task outcome, then they love the extra work. And so everybody wins. But if you try to compensate an admin team on revenue, what I've found is admin teams will favor large deals and neglect small deals, because they're like, well, that small deal doesn't pay me as well. And so, but in most environments, every deal counts. And so we've designed comp structures that work that way. Revenue performance based, where every dollar counts for the salesperson, brings all the flow in, and then widget based fulfillment bonuses on the admin side. Those, man, you get the most successful team there, because everybody cares about what matters to them.
Do you focus on top line revenue, or do you focus on gross profit for salespeople? Because I've always focused on GP, because I don't want them to discount. And we also focus on, you don't get paid till we get paid, because I want you there till the end.
Sure. I think it depends on the role. So like in the mortgage world, for my salespeople, I focused on gross revenue, top line revenue, bring the sales in. And then because they weren't They weren't responsible for the operational expenses. They're just responsible for bringing revenue in. So then I would have my admin team, which is the fulfillment side. So they're bonus there. But then I also have a manager or someone who is like a partner in making sure the business is operationally sound. At that level, I compensate at GP on gross profit. And so if you have those three elements, you got all your admin team, you got your sales team, and you've got your leadership team that cares about the profitability of the business, you're set.
And you've got to figure it out for you, for the particular business, how things are done. And you always have to make sure that the incentives, kind of like you talked about, the incentives drive the behavior you want. Because a lot of times there are unintended consequences. And if you don't think through that, you end up with quite a bit of an issue. People do what you pay them for. Be careful what you pay them for.
That's great. And then also just like, reward them for what they have span of control over. You know, if they win financially based on something that some other department's doing, there's no alignment between what you need them to do and their bonus.
No, that makes a lot of sense. You talk about 3 C's: clarity, capacity, and commitment.
Yeah.
And so can you explain why those 3 and then how you use them to get the outcomes that you want?
Okay. So commitment is everything we just talked about. It's about designing, giving them ownership over outcome, designing compensation plans that align with your desired outcomes for your business, making sure there's alignment between what they're responsible for and how they get compensated so that they're committed to fulfilling on the tasks that you give them. That's commitment. Clarity is what we talked about way earlier, which is if you're going to hand over tasks, make sure you're clear about what you need people to do. Right. So you have to get clear for that. Like if you're hiring your first assistant, you need to be really clear for yourself first on how you do all these things. So, and then the capacity is, can they actually do it? Make sure you're putting the right person in the right role. Do they have the intelligence? Do they have the education? Do they have the tools? Do they have the system? Do they have the resources personally or within the ecosystem to actually fulfill? And so, get clear on what you need them to do. Make sure they're properly resourced and have the capacity to actually fulfill on the task. Don't put the wrong person on the wrong seat on the bus, and make sure you have the right alignment so that you get the commitment out of people.
What about the desire to do the work? And here's why I say this. Too often, much more so in corporate maybe, and probably in small business too, somebody happens to be good at something or you need something done and they're okay at it. So we're like, you got to do this too.
Yeah.
And the people it's not their thing.
I think that comes down to, I think that falls into the capacity and commitment bucket. That's not clarity. That's like, clarity is, hey, this is what I need you to do. And this is task. These are the desired outcomes. Capacity comes down to like, do they want to do it in the first place? So like, I think that's just people selection. If you've got someone in a role and they don't want to do it, they're not interested in that role, then you maybe need to find some other department. Like maybe they might be interested in something else or good at something else. And maybe you got to just look at that and not have them in that role. Sometimes you hire someone that's good for a role, but they're really not, it's not the right fit culturally or emotionally, or they think that they're better than that role or whatever. You got to deal with those things head on. Like you really need someone that wants to be in the role. And that's a critical piece.
How much of a role does culture play? Like, because you said do you hire to your culture? Like, do you test or look at them to say, do you fit our culture? And how do you even define your culture?
That's a good question. We're still a small to medium sized business, and we have 600 agents across the country. But those are all independent operators or mortgage agents. They run their own business within our ecosystem. We probably have 30 people that run the company, in different various like salaried roles. So if we talk about hiring, I'm talking about those 30 people. And if you've got a staff of 20 or 30, you're a small business, small to medium sized business. It's very much a gut feel still for me. So it's, our business is not large enough to have formalized processes where we hire for culture. essentially. We just generally feel like it's a good fit, and we try to make sure that it is. We're careful when we're really, really careful because we're a small business. When someone is not a culture fit, we don't just hire them because they're good at their job. So we're very selective, but we're also by the gut at our size.
So you're making sure. I'm a systems person, like I said,
Yeah.
and my spreadsheets behave. People don't. How have you dealt with that? How do you even like?
Interesting.
Because
I've
for
never heard
me,
that
that's a
before.
difficult thing.
Yeah. I find people don't behave. I'm just
That's
kidding.
what I mean. My spreadsheet
Oh,
does.
no,
The,
my
the
serious.
people don't.
I missed it. Yeah, spreadsheets behave, people don't. We're saying the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. If any of my people hear this, like, we got good people. Spreadsheets behave, people don't. That's tough. I tend to give people a long leash. I tend to give people the benefit of the doubt. Sometimes it doesn't work out. I very rarely in my career have had to drop the hammer, probably because our selection process is decent. Like, we generally find good fits. I've had one or two times where I've brought someone in and it's just like, it causes me a lot of brain damage. So I think for me, my threshold is like, if I'm hiring you, if I'm paying you, your job is to make my life easier. Like, your job is to make people around you feel like you're adding value. Like, if we have 30 people supporting 600, I want those 600 people saying, "Hey, that person's great. I really appreciate that they helped me in my business." If I'm getting that kind of feedback, I'm good. If I'm not, my spidey sense is up. And if that person is also causing me a lot of heartache, then I'm pretty like quick to say, you know what, I don't think this is a fit. But if I think we can get there, then I will give someone a wide berth and a lot of room to get on board.
I find a lot of owners hesitate to let people go. They hold on far too long. Have
Sure.
you noticed that, or do
Yeah.
you find yourself being quicker to say we're done and out?
I'm patient, and I probably earlier in my career I held on far too long. But like I said, if there's a couple of X's, if you're causing problems downstream and you're constantly landing on my desk, then I'm not paying the salary. I'm pretty quick to switch gears on that. But I've only realized that maturity in the last few years. Like, I wasn't as quick before.
Okay, so
I'm getting older. I got less time.
it's a learning game.
Older, less time, less bullshit. Like, yeah.
I understand. Even doing everything correctly, building things correctly, is it still hard to let go?
Yeah, of course. This is your baby. You built it. You want to see it succeed. It's really hard to resist that urge to step in. We did a thing earlier this year. We moved from one way of doing things. I won't say anything specific because I don't want anybody on the team to.
No.
We moved from one way of doing things to another, and there was a minute there where it wasn't happening. It just took too long. We probably missed a window of opportunity. There's a revenue impact. We got the right people on the team. They've been with us forever. And there were many moments where I had to resist the urge to just step in and fix it. But I did. And there was a short-term impact. But we're on the other side of that now, and they're finding their groove. And, with a little guidance, like, obviously we're watching, we're monitoring, we're instructing. And I'd say that department is better off than it was on the old process now. So it's hard. It's hard to watch something fail. But if you have the right level of input and the right people, and you have those right elements, and you give it enough time, like, they will solve it. Like, they will. You should end up on a better place. But you can't ignore it. You have to give it some attention without outright saving it. It's hard. It's hard to do.
It is. I ask these questions because I run into this all the time. So
Yeah.
these are the things that
It's the hardest thing in
owners
the
deal
world to
with.
be a founder, to see something happening, to know that you could just fix it and let it fail. It's really hard to do. But if you do that, you are going to become the bottleneck for whatever that thing is that you solve. And you are not going to have the freedom that you want. You're going to be the process.
No, that makes a lot of sense. AI is the hot thing. How is AI affecting the way you do business? How are you bringing it into your world? What are you noticing and changing with it?
I would say that our industry is a little slow to adopt changing technology. So it's not really it's not fully impacting our day to day in our industry. For me personally, though, I'm a builder. I see things, I want to fix them, I want to create new processes. I have ancillary product lines. So AI has dramatically sped up the amount of time that I can go from idea to prototype and bring new stuff to my people and get it out in the field and test it and then reiterate and make it better. So I love where we are in the world, because I used to come up with ideas and be like, wow, if I want to pursue that, I better make sure there's product market fit first. I got to do all this like preliminary work. I got to map it out. I got to get it right. I got to hire a dev team. It would take 2 years, a year to come out to try something. Now it takes a couple weeks. Over the weekend you can build a prototype almost overnight of any idea you have. So from that perspective, it is dramatically improving our ability to innovate inside our own business. It's spectacular.
So things are moving faster and faster than ever, and you have to innovate. Now, in your sense, you're somewhat lucky that nobody outside your industry has innovated into your industry. But I would think in many industries, if somebody can come in and totally disrupt an old industry, you can't necessarily sit and wait. You have to be proactive to what's going to shift.
You have to be proactive. So I think I feel good about everything that's happening because we are very proactive for our own business, and so we're not head in the sand. So it feels like we're leading the charge for our industry in our space. So I like it. I like the fast pace of it. I like how things move. But you're right. Because we're in a highly regulated finance business, like laws take time to change. So there's subtle disruption behind the scenes. But if you were going to completely disrupt the mortgage funding process in Canada, you need to change the law first. So our industry definitely moves slower, but it's moving, and it's definitely on our radar, and we're watching for it. I think that no matter what industry you're in, though, there has to be opportunity, because everywhere I look, all I see that could be more, like everywhere, all day, every day. I just see opportunities to make things more efficient or help business owners make their own businesses more efficient. I think the number one thing you could do is, if you're a leader in your industry and you're even reasonably good at interacting with AI and operationalizing things, there's a huge opportunity just to help all your peers operationalize and become more efficient. Like there's industries within industries now. So I'm actually personally very excited about all the changes that are happening.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think business has always been that it's constantly shifting. You never know where something is going to change your world, and you have to react to it. I mean, just going back to the simple things of digital photography taking out Kodak, or Netflix taking out Blockbuster, or these things happen in every single industry. And I think a lot of people are blind to see the how fast change can occur,
Yeah.
and how fast they can kind of get knocked off of their game.
Yeah.
I have noticed as a lot of business owners are really about growth. It's always grow, grow, grow. But what I've noticed for a lot of them, they might grow their revenue, but at the end of the day, they're working longer and harder, and they're making the same or less.
Sure. Well, growth comes with its own challenges. There are more to manage. We were that way for the longest time. Grow, grow, grow. We're at a place in our business now where we're like, okay, wrap our arms around our partnerships, make sure that before, like, we probably have another big growth push coming. We're gearing up for that. But this last year or two, we very much have been looking internally at who are the key people around us. How do we enhance those partnerships? How do we make sure that when we do take this next leap forward, that it's actually accretive, that it actually adds value, not just to us, but to all the people around us? We want to create that alignment with everybody. And then the reason for that is because if you set something up where all boats float, then you just have a better outcome, and you're more likely to get that contribution from your partners, your staff, your people, which that gives you that growth without all those extra hassles if you get it right. So we think about that a lot right now, as opposed to just growth for pure growth sake.
No, and I think a lot of it goes back to what you talked about right at the beginning, is building the systems and processes so that you're not stuck in the growth. You're not the bottleneck. You're not the answer to every single problem that comes along and so forth. Are there other lessons you've learned along the way that we haven't touched on yet that business owners should be aware of?
Oh, man, yeah, I mean, we haven't even talked about all the bad things that have happened. We're just talking about all the good, positive stuff. Hiring the right people, growing, getting out of the weeds. Yeah, like I've had, I don't know if you call this lucky or not, but I've been lucky to start from scratch at least twice now. So there's a lot of lessons learned, a lot of painful lessons. The cool thing though is that what I found is you can't take that learning away. Like every time I've had to restart or reset, you're always starting from a place with more knowledge, more experience, often more resources, or you can get the resources back way faster than you got them in the first place. So, yeah.
So it's even in the midst of failure, there's lessons that carry forward that allow you to go faster, smarter, hopefully the next time.
I think you learn more when there's failure. I think that, when things are going well and you're just humming along, you're less likely to stop and be introspective. When things go wrong, you definitely look at it and go, what the hell just happened? So most of my personal growth has come from the harder times.
And you're okay with it.
No, painful, man. I'm not okay with it. Just saying that's what happened. I'm no different than anybody else. I'd love to go back in time and just do what I did and buy a bunch of Bitcoin. That'd be great. But that's not the path for most.
I don't think it's the path for most people, is it?
It's not. And even all those overnight successes that you're seeing out there, and they're not overnight successes. They take a decade and a half or more. No one sees the hard moments. If you're an existing entrepreneur or a new entrepreneur, just know that the path is filled with hard moments.
It is. And I think too often you see the highlight reels and you don't always see what happened underneath and the time that it took, or we forget to look. But I have found most businesses are an overnight success with 10 years of work behind it.
Yeah.
They don't always see the 10 years before the overnight success all of a sudden.
Yeah. And so yeah, it's I think anybody who's venturing down this path, just you're gonna have good moments, you're gonna have bad moments. Try to learn as much as possible as you go, and what I try to do is not hold on to the past. So there's been some very painful moments in my career, and I just try to learn from them and rock on, move on to the next thing. Don't miss the opportunity to learn the lesson, but I'm really quick to let things go. I don't hold a grudge especially against myself. I try not to fault myself for making those mistakes, because you need to be in a good headspace to create the growth, create the momentum, create the positive energy around everybody that's going to follow along on your journey. You got to be in that space more than not.
And I've always found it's easier to learn from other people's mistakes, but for whatever reason, some people just like to make their own. I'm like, okay, you can make your own, but it's easier to learn from that one.
Well, you got a big library there. I noticed some familiar books. Yeah.
What's one truth about success you wish more people understood?
I would say that it's harder than it looks.
It's not easy.
It's not easy.
And no. What's a lesson that cost you a lot but was worth every penny?
Oh man, I had a very expensive consumer marketing budget that I doubled or tripled down on in 2008, and I missed the signals that the market was about to turn, which most people did. It took all my money. I fully pot committed 6 months in advance to radio, TV, flyers, bus ads, all the whole 9 yards, and practically bankrupted me. And I learned a lot in 2008 and 2009. It was a road to recovery.
Hey, you survived.
Made it through. It was tough. Yeah.
That is the key. And hopefully, well, there will always be another dark time. And I think people don't realize that. We haven't had one since then. COVID was different. We'll see what happens the next time. If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
If you're gonna, there's no better time than to try when you're 18 or 16 or 20. When you're young and you have low responsibility, do not be afraid to swing for the fences. Don't worry about what your friends think. Don't worry about what your parents think, your neighbors. Just if there's a part of you that wants to give it a go, that is the most freedom that you will ever have to try. And you should do it. And don't worry about what other people think about you.
Wise advice. And at that age, you know, you're okay sleeping on a mattress in your parents' basement, right? So you really.
Yeah, this is the advice I give my kids, and I'm watching them do some stuff, and they're thriving. And I've watched them also take some flack from their community trying these things out, but they're on the other side of that, and it's very cool to see.
And you're going to get a lot of flack, especially at that age. And the smart ones ignore it and they swing for the fences. And then all of a sudden, everyone becomes your friend.
That is true. That is true.
If people would like to learn more about you, about your book, Why Your Business Won't Let You Go, how do they do that?
My personal handle is Jason Henneberry. So any social media at Jason Henneberry, you can track me down, send me a message. Or you can go to dependencydesign.com. And I wrote a book about founder entrepreneurship, being tied to your business, and it's free. You can just go download a copy.
Cool. We'll put that in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us.
Great. Thanks, Rocky. Appreciate having me on the show.
Hey, thanks for checking out the full unedited video of the Richer Soul podcast. You can get the full audio podcast with intro, outro, and a ton more details here on YouTube or whatever your favorite podcast player is. Don't forget, we've got hundreds of episodes for you to go back through, and you can also get episode information on the Richer Soul website as well. Don't forget to subscribe so you're automatically updated as to what's going on and every time we release a new episode. The first few episodes of the Richer Soul podcast actually lay out the entire framework that everything is built on over all of these years. So check them out as well. Thanks for listening.